Commander Taesung adjusted his uniform one last time before stepping into the Galactic Council chamber. His hands were steady, but his heart raced with anticipation. For centuries, humanity had dreamed of this moment. They had reached the stars, built colonies on distant worlds, and created technology that matched anything the older civilizations possessed. Now, after years of preparation, Earth was finally ready to join the greatest alliance in the galaxy. The massive chamber was unlike anything Taesung had ever seen. The walls stretched up into darkness, covered with holographic displays showing information from across known space. In the center sat 6 elevated platforms, each occupied by representatives of the ancient species that ruled the galaxy. Taesung could feel their eyes on him as he walked forward. His team followed close behind, including the brilliant Dr. Hae-won, whose expertise in diplomacy and technology had prepared them for this historic moment. The Velian representative spoke first. His species resembled towering humanoids with blue-gray skin and large, intelligent eyes that seemed to look through rather than at you. "Humans," the Velian said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Your species is known for your violence and chaos. You have destroyed your own planet multiple times through warfare. Why should we trust a species that cannot even govern itself peacefully?" Taesung had expected this. He had prepared his response carefully. He explained how humanity had learned from its mistakes. He spoke of their technological advances, their art, their music, and their capacity to build bridges between different peoples. He showed them pictures of human colonies thriving on distant worlds, where different races worked together for the common good. His words were strong but respectful, and when he finished, he felt confident that he had made an impression. The Shornath representative rose next. This species was composed of beings made entirely of crystalline structures that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing ways. They communicated through a series of harmonic tones that were translated by machines in the chamber. "We do not question your capability for progress," the Shornath said. "We question your understanding of the deeper mysteries of existence. Your philosophy is shallow. Your spirituality is underdeveloped. You have conquered technology, but not wisdom." Dr. Hae-won felt frustration building inside her. These were the same arguments she had heard in every preliminary meeting. The old civilizations were afraid. They wrapped their fear in words about philosophy and wisdom. But what they really wanted was to keep power in the hands of those who already held it. One by one, the representatives voiced their concerns. The Kelmorans, a species of amphibious beings with graceful movements and sharp intelligence, worried about humanity's tendency to destroy their environment. They pointed out that humans on Earth had damaged their own biosphere, created weapons of mass destruction, and taken thousands of years to develop basic environmental responsibility. How could they trust humanity to protect other worlds? The insectoid Jalkai raised a different concern. Their hive-mind collective structure made decisions through consensus, and that consensus was clear. Humans were unpredictable. They did not follow patterns. They made choices based on emotion as often as on logic. This unpredictability was dangerous in a carefully balanced galactic community. The ethereal luminae, beings of pure energy contained in crystalline vessels, took a surprisingly softer tone. They suggested that perhaps humanity was not yet ready, that perhaps in a few generations, when humans had matured as a species, they could be considered again. It was almost kind, but it was still a rejection. Finally, the mechanical hegemony spoke. These were artificial intelligences that had been uploaded into mechanical bodies centuries ago. They had achieved something close to immortality through technology. The hegemony representative's voice was calm and logical, devoid of emotion. "We have analyzed human behavior, human history, and human capability," the machine said. "We calculate that the probability of humanity becoming a destabilizing force within the Galactic Council is 73%. We recommend against integration." Taesung felt something break inside him as he listened to the voting procedure begin. Each representative raised their hand in a formal gesture of negation. One by one, the votes came in against Earth. No single species voted to accept humanity. The Velians voted no. The Shorneth voted no. The Kelmorans voted no. The Jalkai voted no. The Luminae voted no. Even the hegemony, who Tae-sung had hoped might see the logical benefit of human partnership, voted no. The head of the council, a being whose species had evolved beyond physical form and existed as pure information in the chamber's systems, announced the verdict. The application for Earth's admission to the Galactic Council is denied. Furthermore, the Council has voted to impose a mandatory quarantine zone around the Sol system. No human vessel may venture beyond the designated boundary. Any violation will be met with immediate termination of the offending vessel. Tae-sung stood in silence. Around him, his team members stared in shock. This was worse than rejection. This was imprisonment. This was the galaxy saying to humanity that they were not just unprepared for membership, but so dangerous that they had to be isolated completely. Dr. Hae-won felt her hands clenching into fists. She had spent years studying the Council's philosophy, preparing arguments, designing presentations. Everything she had done had been rejected. All the hope that humanity had built up over the decades. All the dreams of joining the greater galactic community had been crushed in a matter of hours. As they walked out of the chamber, Tae-sung's expression was grim but determined. The council members watched them leave, satisfied that they had made the right decision. The dangerous species had been dealt with. Order had been preserved. But Commander Tae-sung was not a man who accepted defeat easily. As he returned to the human diplomatic vessel, his mind was already working. The council had rejected humanity. Yes, but they had underestimated something crucial. They had underestimated the human spirit. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for survival, for adaptation, for fighting against impossible odds. The journey back to Earth was long and silent. Tae-sung looked out at the stars, at the vast and beautiful cosmos that had rejected his species. He made a decision in that moment. Humanity would not beg. Humanity would not accept this judgment. Somehow, some way, they would force their way back into the stars. And when they did, the galaxy would understand that they had made a terrible mistake. 10 years had passed since the Galactic Council's rejection of humanity. Those 10 years had transformed Earth and the human colonies across the solar system in ways no one could have predicted. What began as desperation had become determination. And determination had become innovation. Commander Tae-sung no longer held his official title, but people still called him Commander. He was retired now, living on the lunar base that had become the unofficial center of human technological development. The ban from the stars had not weakened humanity. Instead, it had focused their energy like a laser beam. Without the ability to expand outward, humans turned their attention inward, perfecting their technology and their resolve. In a secure underground facility hidden beneath the mountains of Mars, Dr. Hae-won worked late into the night. The brilliant engineer had spent the last decade designing weapons systems, defensive platforms, and advanced spacecraft that pushed the boundaries of human capability. But her eyes were tired, and her heart was heavy. She had not come into this field because she loved weapons. She had come to explore the mysteries of the universe. Instead, she found herself designing instruments of war. The door to her laboratory opened without warning. Captain Jae-in walked in, and Dr. Hae-won could immediately see the rage in her eyes. Jae-in was a pilot, one of the best humanity had ever produced. She moved with the grace of someone who spent most of her time in zero gravity. Her voice, when she spoke, was tight with controlled anger. "They did it again," Jae-in said without preamble. The Kelmoran patrol ships were spotted near the outer colonies. They destroyed the research station on Europa. 300 people. Hae-won. 300 scientists and workers. Just gone. Dr. Hae-won closed her eyes. This had become a pattern over the past few years. The Galactic Council had not been content with simply rejecting humanity and imposing a quarantine. They were actively sabotaging human expansion efforts. The official story was that these were acts of pirates and rogue elements, but HFY had seen the evidence. These attacks were coordinated. They were systematic. They were official policy hidden beneath layers of deniability. "I know," HFY said quietly. "I received the report 2 hours ago." "We need to do something," Jae-in said, her voice rising. "We need to push back. We have the capability. We have the weapons. We have the ships." Before HFY could respond, another figure entered the laboratory. Dr. Q1 was a woman with a complicated past. She had worked for underground resistance movements before the Council's rejection, building weapons for causes that were not always just, but she had also been brilliant. And when humanity needed that brilliance, Tae-sung had brought her in from the shadows. "Captain Jae-in is right," Q1 said. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "We have been patient. We have been peaceful, and they have used that patience against us. Every time we turn inward and focus on our own development, they strike at us. The Council is following a deliberate strategy to keep humanity isolated and weak." Dr. HFY stood up from her desk and walked to the window. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see the Martian landscape stretching out toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, beyond the solar system, the rest of the galaxy was going about its business, unaware of the suffering their policies were causing. "I need to show you something," HFY said finally. She pulled up a data file that had been delivered by a smuggler 3 days ago. It was a communication log between Council members. The translation was imperfect, but the meaning was clear. The Velians had been orchestrating the attacks. They had been funding pirate groups to strike at human colonies. The goal was not just to weaken humanity militarily, but to break their spirit, to make them believe that the galaxy was simply too hostile for them to ever truly join. The file contained something even more damaging. The Velians had been recruiting human agents within Earth's government and colonies. There were people working from the inside to undermine human progress. There were saboteurs in key positions. The conspiracy went deeper than anyone had realized. "This is everything we need," Jae-in said, her eyes scanning the data. "We can take this to the other species. Show them what the Velians have been doing. We can prove that the original ban was unjust." "No," HFY said. "That is what they are counting on. If we present this evidence now, it will be dismissed. The other Council members will say that it is forged, that it is human propaganda. We have no credibility with them. We are a quarantined species that they have already decided is too dangerous." "So what do we do?" Q1 asked. At that moment, Commander Tae-sung arrived at the laboratory. He had been briefed on the new attack and on the discovery of the conspiracy. His face was lined with age and worry, but his eyes still held the same determination that had carried him through the rejection a decade earlier. "We change the game," Tae-sung said. "For 10 years, we have played by their rules. We have tried to prove ourselves worthy, while they have systematically attacked us. We have been too soft, too patient. The Council fears us. That is the real reason they rejected us. That is the real reason they quarantined us. They see our potential, and it terrifies them." "What are you saying?" HFY asked, though she already knew the answer. "I am saying it is time to remind the galaxy that humanity is not to be trifled with," Tae-sung replied. "We need to show them that we are not helpless. We are not weak. We are not a species that will accept exile without fighting back. We are going to build a team, and we are going to make our presence known, not with destruction and violence, but with precision and strategy." Dr. HFY felt something shift inside her. She had spent 10 years trying to work through the system, trying to prove humanity's worth through peaceful means, but the system had rejected them. The peaceful approach had failed. Now, it was time to try something different. "I can have advanced fighters ready in 3 months," Jae-in said immediately. The best pilots in the solar system will join us. They are tired of hiding. I can coordinate the digital systems, Q1 added. We have been working on this for years without realizing it. The infrastructure is already in place. Then we begin, Taesung said. We begin Operation Phoenix Rising. We begin showing the galaxy that humanity will rise, whether they want us to or not. The four of them stood together in the laboratory on Mars, looking out at the red planet's surface. None of them knew if they would succeed. None of them knew if their plan would work, or if it would end in disaster. But they all understood one thing. Humanity had been sitting in the dark for too long. It was time to light a fire. The ice moon of Gala 7 hung in the darkness of space like a frozen pearl. Its surface was covered with ancient ice formations that reflected starlight in strange and beautiful patterns. But beneath the surface, and in orbit around the moon, lay something far more sinister. The hegemony's primary processing station hung in space like a mechanical spider, all angular limbs and glowing nodes. This station served as the computational center for thousands of artificial intelligences across the sector. It was heavily defended, constantly monitored, and considered nearly impossible to penetrate. Captain Jae-in sat in the cockpit of the lead fighter, her hands gripping the controls with familiar ease. Around her, 12 human fighter craft moved in perfect formation. The ships were sleek and fast, designed by Dr. Hae-won to be more agile than anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. They had been in deep space for 3 days, using every trick in the book to stay hidden from enemy sensors. False readings, gravitational masking, and electronic camouflage had kept them invisible as they approached their target. All pilots. This is Jae-in, she said into the communication system. We go silent in 30 seconds. No communications until I give the signal. Remember your training. Remember why we are doing this. For the colonists, they have killed. For the families they have destroyed. For humanity. The pilots responded with quiet acknowledgement. These were the best of the best, drawn from military academies and private defense forces across the solar system. Many of them had lost friends and family to the Galactic Council's covert attacks. They were fighting for something more than just tactical advantage. They were fighting for justice. Meanwhile, in the security bunker on Mars, Dr. Hae-won sat before a wall of monitors, her fingers flying across holographic keyboards. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying the hegemony's digital architecture, identifying weaknesses, and designing an algorithm that could infiltrate their systems without triggering their defenses. The algorithm was beautiful in its complexity. It was like a ghost, existing in multiple states simultaneously, appearing and disappearing in the network in ways that should have been impossible. Status report, Commander Taesung said, entering the bunker. He looked older than he had a year ago, worn down by the weight of his decision. If this operation failed, if even one ship was destroyed, if any human lives were lost, it would be on his shoulders. The fighters are in position, Hae-won replied without looking away from her screens. They are waiting for my signal. And a visit. With way quinte de visit. And a visit into Fector. On Riblive. Once I penetrate the station's outer defenses, they will move in fast. We have a window of approximately 4 minutes before the hegemony's automated defense systems can fully respond. If USC, quote, and if something goes wrong, Taesung asked. Then we have very fast pilots, Hae-won said with a slight smile. And a lot of very angry humans ready to fight. Taesung nodded. He had to trust that they had prepared well enough. He had to believe that humanity's capacity for adaptation and innovation would give them the edge they needed. The countdown began in silence. Hae-won's fingers moved across the holographic keyboards with increasing speed, sending the ghost algorithm through the station's defenses. The first layer fell easily. The second layer took longer. The third layer required her to make a choice. She could take more time and try to proceed silently, or she could force her way through, triggering alarms but achieving faster penetration. She chose force. Alarms began blaring across the hegemony's network. The station's defense systems activated, flooding the digital landscape with countermeasures. But HFY was ready. She had anticipated this. The ghost algorithm split into dozens of smaller versions, each one diving deeper into the network, each one causing controlled damage that would distract the station's attention systems. "Go, go, go!" she shouted into the communication system. The 12 human fighter craft suddenly emerged from the darkness, their weapons hot and their sensors blazing. The hegemony station tried to respond, but its attention was divided. The hegemony had expected an attack, perhaps, but they had not expected an attack this fast, this coordinated, this seemingly impossible. The human ships moved with grace and precision, performing aerial maneuvers that had been designed specifically to confuse mechanical targeting systems. Captain J.N. fired the first shot, a precisely calculated strike that destroyed one of the station's outer communication arrays. Immediately, the other fighters followed her lead. They were not trying to destroy the station. That was not the goal. The goal was to prove something. To prove that humanity had advanced to a level that the Galactic Council had not anticipated. The hegemony station's defenses began to activate, but they moved slowly, mechanically. The artificial intelligences aboard the station were struggling to process what was happening. The human fighters should not have been able to penetrate the outer defenses. They should not have been able to achieve this level of coordination. They should not have been able to move this fast. But they had, and they did. Jayan's fighter moved with impossible speed, weaving between energy beams and automated drone responses. She had been training for this moment her entire life. Every simulation, every combat scenario, every moment of study had led to this instant. She was not just flying a machine. She had become one with her fighter, moving and thinking as a unified entity. Dr. HFY sent the signal to initiate the final phase. The ghost algorithm reached the station's core systems. She had designed it to be non-destructive, to infiltrate and demonstrate capability, rather than to cause permanent damage. The algorithm unfurled through the station's consciousness like a flower blooming in fast forward. The hegemony station suddenly went quiet. The defense systems ceased their attacks. The automated drones held their fire. "We have control," HFY said quietly. "Pull back," Tae-sung commanded. The fighter pilots received their withdrawal signal and immediately began their retreat. The hegemony station did not follow them. It could not. Its systems were temporarily paralyzed under HFY's control. 3 hours later, as the human fighters were safely back in the solar system, Commander Tae-sung sent a message to the Galactic Council. It was short and clear. "The quarantine has ended. Humanity is ready to talk. We are no longer a restricted species. We are a power you must respect. Open communications, or we will continue to demonstrate our capability." The hegemony responded within an hour, requesting an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The message was simple. Humans have achieved technological parity. We recommend reassessment of current policies. For the first time in 10 years, there was hope. For the first time since their rejection, humanity had been heard, not through words or diplomacy, but through action and capability. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The aftermath of the attack on Gala 7 sent shockwaves through the galaxy. What humanity had achieved in those few minutes of combat had done more to change the conversation about Earth than any diplomatic meeting could have accomplished. The Galactic Council had fractured. Some species wanted to respond with military force. Others wanted to open dialogue. And a few, to the surprise of everyone, began to question whether the original ban had been just. Dr. Q-1 sat in a dark corner of a space station orbiting one of the Kelmoran homeworlds. The station was a neutral meeting point, a place where species could gather without the influence of the official council chambers. She had been sent here with a specific mission: to make contact with the Kelmoran peace delegation and begin negotiations. The Kelmorans were a species that had evolved in vast oceans. They resembled a combination of humanoid form and aquatic grace, with skin that changed colors based on their emotional state and their environment. The Kelmoran who approached Q1 was named Sa-Jin, and his skin was a mixture of blue and green, indicating a state of cautious interest. "You understand the risk you are taking," Sa-Jin said as he sat down across from Q1. "If the Velians discover that you are here, if they find out that we are talking, there will be serious consequences." "I understand," Q1 replied. "But I also understand that your species has questions about what happened. Questions about whether the original decision to ban humanity was correct." Sa-Jin's skin rippled with what might have been laughter or surprise. "You are very direct. I was told humans were unpredictable and chaotic. But you seem quite strategic. Absan es Kanasan. You seem quite strategic." "We are whatever we need to be," Q1 said. "We are survivors. That is what our species has always been best at. We survive, we adapt, we overcome." Over the course of hours, Q1 explained humanity's side of the story. She presented evidence of the sabotage campaigns, the attacks on colonies, the covert operations that the Velians had been running to keep humanity isolated and weak. She explained that humans had never wanted war with the galaxy. They had wanted partnership, cooperation, and integration. But when they had been rejected, when their peaceful overtures had been met with violence and sabotage, they had been left with no choice but to defend themselves. Sa-Jin listened carefully. His skin shifted through various colors as he processed the information. Finally, he said something that made Q1's heart jump. "There are others in the Kelmoran delegation who feel the same way I do. We have been troubled by our role in the original ban. We have been troubled by the evidence of sabotage. There is a growing belief among our people that we made a mistake." Meanwhile, Captain Jae-in was engaged in a very different kind of mission. She had received intelligence that a group of Luminae refugees had been captured by hardline Velian forces and were being held in a facility on the edge of neutral space. The Luminae were beings of pure energy, and the Velians had been pressuring them to join the anti-human coalition. Those who refused had been arrested, in violation of multiple galactic laws. Jae-in led a rescue team of 8 human commandos and 2 volunteer Luminae soldiers. The Luminae soldiers were warriors who had been exiled from their own people for refusing to condemn humanity. They moved like beings of pure grace, their energy forms cutting through the darkness like living light. The facility where the refugees were held was supposed to be secure. It was supposed to be impossible to penetrate. But Jae-in had studied the building's layout, and she had come up with a plan that would use speed and surprise to overcome the Velian guards. The assault lasted less than 5 minutes. The human commandos moved with precision, disabling security systems and neutralizing guards with minimal casualties. The Luminae soldiers used their unique nature to bypass physical barriers that would have stopped ordinary soldiers. By the time the Velian forces realized they were under attack, the prisoners had already been freed. Jae-in's team extracted 43 Luminae refugees, along with 12 members of other species who had been imprisoned for speaking against the ban. As their transport ship left the planet, the Velian defense forces attempted to pursue them. But the human pilots were faster, more skilled, and more determined to succeed. The rescue operation became legendary in the galaxy. News channels broadcast images of Luminae beings embracing Jae-in in gratitude. The refugees told stories of brutal treatment, of interrogations designed to break their spirits, of attempts to force them to denounce humanity as a threat to galactic peace. And they told stories of Captain Jae-in's rescue team, of humans willing to risk their lives to save beings from an entirely different species. Back on Earth, Dr. Hae-won made a discovery that would change everything. She had been analyzing the data from Gala 7, studying the hegemony's network architecture, when she found something hidden in the deepest layers of their systems. It was a communication log, heavily encrypted and carefully hidden. But once she broke through the encryption, she found evidence that changed the entire narrative. The Velians had not just been attacking humanity in secret. They had been manipulating the hegemony and the other council species for years. The evidence showed how Velian operatives had infiltrated council debates, how they had presented false information to justify the ban, and how they had orchestrated the subsequent sabotage campaigns to keep humanity isolated and weak. More importantly, the logs showed that the Velians had been planning to do the same thing to other species that showed signs of rapid advancement. They had a playbook for maintaining their power, and it involved suppressing any species that might challenge their dominance. HFY immediately brought this information to Commander Tae-sung. His face grew dark as he read through the evidence. "The Kelmorans need to see this," Tae-sung said. "Everyone in the galaxy needs to understand that the Velians have been using us as a test case for their true agenda. If they can suppress humanity successfully, they can suppress anyone." "There is more," HFY said, pulling up additional files. Some of the hegemony units were secretly sympathetic to humanity. There were differences of opinion among the artificial intelligences. Some of them actually admired our determination and felt that the ban was unjust. They hid this information, but it is all here in the logs. Tae-sung felt something shift inside him. They had started this operation thinking they would have to fight the entire galaxy, but what they were discovering was that the galaxy was not united against them. There were factions within every species that questioned the ban. There were beings, both biological and artificial, who believed that humanity deserved a chance. "Contact the Kelmorans," he said to Q1 through the communication system. "Contact the Luminae. Let them know we have something to show them. Let them know that we have evidence that will change everything." Over the next few days, covert meetings took place across the solar system and in secret locations throughout the galaxy. Diplomats and warriors from multiple species began to coordinate with humanity. The Kelmorans officially announced that they were questioning the original ban. The Luminae released a public statement, thanking Captain J-In and humanity for their rescue operation and expressing their support for a reassessment of Earth's status. Even some of the reformed hegemony units came forward, willing to testify about what had really happened in their network systems. They spoke of the Velian manipulation, the false justifications for the ban, and their belief that humanity had been treated unjustly. The unified front that had rejected humanity just 10 years earlier was crumbling. And in its place, a new coalition was forming. A coalition built not on fear and control, but on justice and equality. The Galactic Council chambers had been transformed for the Emergency Reassessment Tribunal. Additional holographic displays had been installed to handle the unprecedented volume of evidence and testimony. Representatives from species not normally invited to council proceedings had been granted temporary access. Journalists and observers from across known space filled the viewing galleries. The entire galaxy was watching as humanity's fate hung in the balance once again. Commander Tae-sung stood in the center of the chamber, but this time his posture was different. He was not supplicating. He was not begging. He was standing as an equal, a representative of a species that had proven itself capable of matching the technological and strategic skills of the Council's most powerful members. Beside him stood Dr. HFY and Captain J-In. Behind them, in the gallery, sat the leaders of the reform movement within each species, the Kelmorans who questioned the original ban, the Luminae refugees who had been rescued, and the reformed hegemony units willing to break ranks. The Velian delegation sat opposite them, their blue-gray skin darkening with what appeared to be anger or apprehension. The lead Velian, a figure named Kasum, had been the primary architect of the sabotage campaigns against humanity. He had orchestrated the attacks on colonies, recruited human saboteurs, and coordinated the disinformation campaign that had justified the original ban. This tribunal is called to reassess the status of humanity within the Galactic Council. The neutral arbiter announced. The arbiter was a being of pure consciousness, evolved beyond physical form, and considered completely impartial by all sides. We will hear evidence and testimony. We will examine the circumstances of the original ban. We will determine whether that ban was justified and whether Earth's membership in the Council should be reconsidered. Commander Tae-sung stepped forward first. His voice was calm and measured. The original ban was based on fear and prejudice. The Council feared humanity because we represent something unprecedented in galactic history. We are a species that learns fast, adapts quickly, and refuses to accept limitations placed upon us by others. But these are not crimes. These are strengths. Yet the Council treated them as threats. He presented the basic facts of humanity's history, the wars they had fought, the mistakes they had made, but also the recovery, the learning, the growth. He spoke of humanity's capacity for compassion, their ability to build bridges between different peoples, and their determination to become worthy members of the galactic community. But what is most important to understand, Taesung continued, is that the fear the Council felt about humanity was not new fear. It was old fear. It was the fear that any dominant power has when confronted with potential competition. The Council did not reject us because we were dangerous. The Council rejected us because we threatened the established order. Dr. Hae-won stepped forward next and presented the evidence of the Velian conspiracy. She displayed the communication logs, the coordination of the sabotage campaigns, the recruitment of human agents to work against their own species. She showed how the attacks had been planned and executed with deliberate calculation, all designed to keep humanity isolated and weak. The Velian delegation will claim this evidence is forged, Hae-won said, but the information came directly from the hegemony's core systems. It is verified by reformed artificial intelligences willing to testify under oath. The conspiracy is real, the damage is real, and the injustice is real. Captain Jae-in then presented her account of the rescue operation. She showed video footage of the Luminae refugees being held in Velian detention facilities. She presented medical evidence of the torture and interrogation the prisoners had endured. She told the story of humans willing to die to save beings from another species, despite the war that the Council had declared against humanity. "This is who we are," Jae-in said, her voice strong and clear. "We are not the monsters the Council feared. We are warriors. Yes. We are strategic. Yes. But we are also compassionate. We are also willing to sacrifice for what we believe is right. If the Council had given us a chance, they would have seen this from the beginning." The Velian Kasum stood up to respond. His voice was angry, his arguments desperate. He repeated the old accusations. Humans were too aggressive. Humans were too unpredictable. Humans could not be trusted. The rescue operation was merely a public relations stunt, designed to manipulate the Council's perception of humanity. "You speak of our concerns as if they are irrational," Kasum said. "But we are protecting galactic stability. Humans have destroyed their own world multiple times through warfare. Why should we trust them with access to our technology, our resources, our way of life?" End quote. Rises Wilden Falanik said it. Rating access stages, end quote, and because we have learned, Taesung replied calmly. And because the alternative is that we will continue to fight. The Council forced us into isolation. The Council attacked our colonies. The Council tried to break our spirit. And instead of breaking, we became stronger. We became united. We became determined. If the Council continues this course, it will create an enemy. But if the Council allows us integration, it will gain an ally. The Shorneth representative, a being of crystalline beauty, rose to speak. "I have examined all the evidence," the Shorneth said. "I must admit that my initial assessment of humanity was wrong. I was influenced by Velian propaganda. I allowed fear to override logic. The data is clear. Humanity was treated unjustly. The sabotage campaigns were real. The Velians used the Council to advance their own agenda of control. Ten plus. End quote. The Shorneth's voice grew stronger. "I was wrong to support the ban. I apologize to humanity, and to this Council, for my error in judgment. I will not make that mistake again." The Kelmoran delegation stood as one. Sajin stepped forward, his skin a vibrant display of multiple colors. "The Kelmorans withdraw our previous support for the ban. We believe humanity should be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. We believe they have proven themselves worthy through their actions and their character. The Luminae representatives, including those who had been rescued by Jayan's team, spoke next. They provided testimony about their imprisonment, about the brutality of Velian interrogators, and about their transformation from beings who had been indifferent to humanity's plight into beings who now supported human integration. I was tortured for refusing to condemn humans, one Luminae said, his voice echoing with harmonics of pain and determination. The Velians wanted me to say that humanity was a threat, but I refused, because I knew that humans were not our enemies. Our enemy was the species that held us prisoner for our beliefs. The reformed hegemony units came forward and provided technical testimony about the Gala 7 incident. They explained how humanity's algorithm had been elegant and sophisticated, demonstrating a level of digital intelligence that rivaled their own capabilities. They testified that the humans had specifically designed their infiltration to be non-destructive, proving that they could have caused far more damage but had chosen restraint. This demonstrates wisdom, the lead hegemony representative said. This demonstrates the kind of judgment that a truly dangerous species would not possess. Dangerous species use their power to destroy. Humans use their power to demonstrate capability while maintaining control and avoiding unnecessary harm. The voting procedure began. The Velians cast a vote against humanity, their faces dark with rage and humiliation. The Kelmorans voted to grant full membership. The Luminae voted in favor. The reformed hegemony units voted for integration. The Shornath abstained but announced publicly that they would support the decision of the majority. They added an apology to humanity for their initial prejudgment and offered to work toward reconciliation. When the final tally was announced, the result was clear. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The quarantine was lifted. Earth would be integrated into the broader galactic community. But the vote carried conditions. A 5-year probationary period was imposed. Additional oversight and review mechanisms were put in place. The Velians would have limited representation in decisions regarding humanity until trust could be fully restored. Commander Taesung accepted these conditions with grace. He understood that such limitations were necessary. Trust had to be rebuilt step by step. But what mattered was that the ban had been lifted. What mattered was that humanity had been vindicated. What mattered was that the galaxy would never underestimate humans again. As he looked around the council chamber at the assembly of diverse species, some celebrating, some sulking, some still uncertain, Taesung felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Humanity had fought for their place among the stars, not with conquest and destruction, but with courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination to prove their worth.